Welcome to A Time for Change, everyone, presented by Citi. I'm Alexis Christoforous here with Anjali Kamlani and Marquise Francis. Twitter, Google, Vimeo, Microsoft, Adobe, and IBM, all major U.S.-based tech companies, all led by CEOs with roots in India. And they're certainly not the only companies. What is behind this trend, and what's the impact on these companies' bottom lines?
Well, Alexis, joining us to discuss this new wave of leaders is Ravi Kumar, president of Infosys, a multinational tech company based in India. Ravi, thank you for joining us and welcome back to Yahoo Finance. Obviously, this is a point of pride for Indians, but I just want to dig in a little bit. In the last week alone, we've seen both Twitter and Groupon announcing new India origin CEOs. What are your thoughts about this trend?
Anjali, thank you so much for the opportunity to talk to your audience. Well, in recent times, businesses across the world and businesses in America have been running at high clock speed. There is a need for empathy and purpose in enterprise landscapes. Culture and values play a very important role. I think Indian origin CEOs, be it CEOs who've actually done their high schools in India and have done their undergrad and grad in the US, or done undergrad in India and grad and PhDs in the US, they have this unique confluence, I would say, of enabling themselves on the clock speed of businesses, especially the tech industry is going at much higher clock speed. And for that, you need the knack of learning, unlearning, and relearning, and be a lifelong learner. I think the Indian education system allows you to, if you have had some exposure, allows you to be that lifelong learner. In addition to that, I would say, in addition to education, which plays a very important role, and the cultural values, the upbringing, and the struggles you go through to get to where you get to in the US, I think plays a very important role as well. Back in India, if you've had an exposure, the absence of a social safety net allows you to keep family values and support to play a very important role. So that actually plays into the corporations these CEOs work for equally, to be resilient, thrive in ambiguity, battling uncertain terrains, being resourceful, breaking deadlocks. All of these play a very important role in corporate landscapes. And when you leave all of that, if you have an Indian origin and come over to the US and work from scratch, is a very humbling experience, and it instills humility and empathy at a workplace as you go up for success. So
Ravi,
the one last thing I wanted to talk about is people underestimate how much the US gives you the upward mobility in jobs in compared to any other country. And I think the Indian executives, Indian origin executives, benefit significantly from the American diaspora, which gives them that upward mobility to succeed in jobs.
Yeah, Ravi, I want to jump off that point because as an India-based company, are there cultural differences in company philosophy, in the way leadership works, that sometimes can get lost in translation when adapting to a US-based corporate culture? And I'm also just wondering what your upbringing as a native of India, how that has informed your leadership style.
All of what I said was really influential in my own exposure to the U.S. Corporate ecosystem. I've been in the U.S. for 6+ years. I have got this combination of being a lifelong learner, building empathy in workplaces, thrive in ambiguity, working on higher clock speed, driving purpose in enterprises, and hiring on potential. Just to give you a sense, we think at Infosys, we are taking this experiment to scale. We're hiring from schools in the US in the last few years. We think whatever the Indian origin CEOs have been able to do in the US is a combination of these forces. We could create that experiment at scale. We could hire on potential. We hire from schools and colleges. We hire from community colleges. We hire from mid-career shifts in the US. Just to give you an example, we recently signed up with the Thurgood Marshall Fund to go to historically Black colleges and universities and tap into 1,600 people who could come into the tech ecosystem. We're building corporate training university in Indianapolis, which is the largest. So a combination of these things, we believe we could take it at scale and not just benefit Indian origin CEOs, but benefit Americans who can actually thrive in the local ecosystems. So
Ravi, I'm so glad you brought that up. Ravi, it's Anjali here. I'm so glad you brought that up because it seems like that whole pulling, from the school systems, that's definitely something that we see largely as an Indian strategy. And I just wonder, as the number of H-1B visa petitions have increased dramatically over the years, we've seen companies like yours have built out the U.S. presence and the hiring you've been talking about. But there's also, on the flip side, right, the concern about brain drain. There was a meme that circulated after Twitter's hiring, and I'm sure you saw it as well. That's a play on an old Indian political slogan. And it basically says, Indian educated individuals are growing the U.S. economy. I wonder what your thoughts are on that.
Yeah, Anjali, that's a great question, actually. I think the Indian ecosystem has benefited as well because there are enough startups. It's a 1+ billion people economy. There are enough opportunities back in India to thrive on innovation. Equally, not only are Indian heritage firms in the US bringing that leadership to the US, we think we have this opportunity to thrive in the American ecosystem by actually bringing Americans into the play. And that's why our entire endeavor since 2017 has been to build this large corporate training infrastructure so that we could create lifelong learners. The Infosys Foundation in the US is working on computer science embrace in K-12 schools. We think the agency of lifelong learners has to be in schools. We took this first pivot of hiring without degrees because we believe 50% of the US workforce, which is in low potential jobs, if we can identify their potential, we can transition them to high potential jobs using our training infrastructure. The mid-career shifts we are doing now is just a fascinating opportunity for Americans to live the American dream. And we think this whole culture of what we have built for 30 years at Infosys in India can actually be replicated in the US for the last few years. So we're super excited to bring the lifelong learning culture, empathy, purpose, values to workplaces, which we believe will not just benefit Indian origin executives in the US, but Americans who can actually go up the chain and create and use the upward mobility ecosystem of the US. There is no other country in the world which gives you the upward mobility in jobs. We underestimate it. America is really that one unique nation which gives you that upward mobility if you have the potential, and we think we can tap into it.
Sure thing. Well, we'll definitely see how it all pans out. Ravi Kumar, Infosys president, it's always a pleasure to have you on. Coming up, the son of 2 Indian doctors who is working to revolutionize email. We'll talk to him after this quick break.
I've been running my own gym for a little over 3 years now. What's up, brother? There is no better feeling than when you change someone's life for the better. I started investing to put money back into my business. I use Yahoo Finance to research and stay on top of my game. I invest in my business for my family's future.
I'm just all about, living life to the fullest. Wherever I play, I go big. In the stadium or Yahoo Fantasy.
Draft day, baby.
You're going down this year, my friend.
First pick right here.
Gutless.
Did you even want to win this year?
With the 3rd pick, Team Juju selects.
Bro.
You're a 4th-round pick at best.
Man, your season's over. You're done.
Yeah, keep talking. What in the Matrix hell?
Welcome to Space Jam.
Get ready.
When I beat you, all of the tunes will be deleted, so...
For the summer's biggest event.
What up? It's Porky Pig. They call me P-Double. Your squad is all jokes. This battle's now over. That's all, folks. Just like I drew it up.
Space Jam.
Rent or own the latest movies with Verizon Fios On Demand.
Welcome to Influencers. I'm Andy Serwer.
Individuals have to become financially literate.
Maybe there is a path forward.
This is an incredible moment in American history.
We have a time where people are actually talking about things they never talked about before.
Look at the trajectory of humankind.
You can have honesty and transparency as a value.
The more you get done, the more opportunity you're going to be given.
Stick around long enough, you'll see everything in markets.
Welcome back to A Time for Change presented by Citi. We're talking today about a new wave of leaders in Silicon Valley, CEOs of South Asian descent, and how they landed in the C-suite and how they're reshaping the world of tech.
Rahul Vohra was born in England, the son of two Indian doctors, and now he's the CEO and founder of Superhuman, an emo productivity app that just raised $75 million in Series C funding. Rahul, thanks for joining us this afternoon.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you so much. Just to get into things, London, India, US, obviously three dynamic places, all very different, but also very integral in your life. I'm curious, how have these places shaped how you do and lead in business?
Well, I think one of the interesting things about growing up in England is you have an environment that isn't particularly entrepreneurial. This became clear to me when I was a teenager and I set my sights on moving to the US. So I did, and I think as previous guests have noted, this is the country of upward mobility. This is the great American dream. Very proud to have been here for the last 10 years and achieved everything we have. But I think I owe a lot also to my Indian background.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And talking about that American dream, I'm curious, what did you see that Superhuman could kind of fix in the email space? Because obviously this is not your first foray into entrepreneurship, but you definitely saw a need, and that's why you started Superhuman. Why has it been so successful in its infancy?
Oh, absolutely. Well, there were 1 billion people in the world who spend on average 3 hours a day just reading and writing email. So that's 3 billion hours every single day that just go into doing email. And yet we use these one-size-fits-all tools to do the job, tools like Gmail or Outlook. And so with Superhuman, you get through your inbox twice as fast as before. And most of our customers actually save 3 hours per week.
Rahul, Anjali here. I wonder, going back to being of Indian descent, looking at across different sectors, we've seen startups and smaller companies. CEOs of Indian descent isn't really all that uncommon nowadays. I wonder, from your experience, have you seen that that's helped in any way when it comes to VC funding, or are you still struggling? Are there still prejudices that you run into?
I personally haven't encountered any prejudices as I've gone for VC funding. Like I mentioned, I grew up in England. My parents, who are also Indian, emigrated there. And I really benefited from parents who were the best in their universities. They were at the top of their fields, and they expected no less from me. But they did so in a very gentle way. They managed to cultivate in me a love of learning as well as a love of winning. And I believe to be a great CEO, I believe that to raise VC funding, you need to love both. So I was lucky to have that upbringing.
I want to talk about that upbringing. I know that in general, Indians and Indian Americans, largely speaking, have been dubbed as like a model minority. And I'm sure you've experienced some of that as well. But we've also seen some reports of bad behavior. For example, Better.com CEO firing 900 employees over Zoom. And we've seen other reports of fraud. So that, I think, stands in stark contrast to sort of the models that we've seen with the big tech CEOs like Sundar, Arvind, and Satya. And so I want to get your take on this. What do you think is the reputation that Indian executives have?
Yeah, I think there are going to be bad actors in any ecosystem. But I think on the flip side, there are some attributes that make Indian CEOs particularly interesting to boards. This is why we see these appointments. I think they're highly resilient given the unique circumstances of the country. Now, this is an experience even I didn't have because I grew up in England. But life in India is hard. You have to deal with corruption. You have to deal with poor infrastructure. There are Byzantine obstacles at every turn. And I also think that most Indian CEOs lean into diversity. And we should observe that India has 6 major religions and quite literally dozens of officially recognized regional languages. And so I think that Indian CEOs, on average, find it easier to work with a wide variety of beliefs and attitudes, something that I also think that the US needs now more than ever, and it's being reflected in these CEO appointments.
And touching on that aspect of diversity, and I really appreciate how you mentioned why that's so important to Indian origin CEOs. I'm curious, what other areas within corporations do you see an opportunity for representation? Because oftentimes you may see a lot of a group at the top, a lot at the bottom, but sometimes a lot of things are missing in the middle. And are you also seeing that across the board?
So we work on representation across the board on multiple vectors, obviously not just gender, not just race, a variety of different things. And that's both at the executive level as well as the mid-manager level, as well as the IC level. Speaking for my peer group and the founders and the CEOs that I work with, many of whom are Indian, but many of whom also are not, I know that this is top of mind for the vast majority of CEOs here in Silicon Valley.
Great. And speaking of the fact that you have this network of other CEOs, in general, what makes a good CEO?
Well, we could talk about that one for a while. But real quick, off the top of my head, the ability to listen, the ability to answer succinctly, the ability to be empathetic, the ability to take feedback and criticism well, and then the ability to get folks really excited and jazzed up for a compelling future.
Great. Thank you so much. Rahul, please stick with us. Superhuman just has a new study out today that shows how to keep workers both productive and happy. And we're going to talk about that right after this break.
Yahoo Plus Tech is an all-new way to set up, sync, support, and protect your eligible home tech, all under one simple plan. Cracks, spills, and mechanical failures? You're covered. For all your other tech issues, Asurion experts are here for you 24/7 to solve problems and help you do more with tech, like secure your home network, understand parental controls, or choose the right streaming device. We can even help you decide what to buy next based on your exact needs. With Yahoo Plus Tech, you can leave your tech troubles at the door.
This is Yahoo Finance Plus. Trade like it's not your first rodeo. Dive deeper with advanced analytics. Trade smarter with in-depth research reports and unique data. Make confident moves and grab your portfolio by the horns with Yahoo Finance Plus.
I've been running my own gym for a little over 3 years now.
What's up, brother?
There is no better feeling than when you change someone's life for the better. I started investing to put money back into my business. I use Yahoo Finance to research and stay on top of my game. I invest in my business for my family's future.
Welcome to Pine Grove.
This table is by invitation only.
Are you serious? They're like Mean Girls, but with medical alert bracelets.
High school, we graduate. Here we die.
It was magical.
Has that line worked for you in the past?
Not so much.
Come on, be one of us. We are the cool ones. We don't take crap from anyone.
Rent or own the latest movies with Verizon Fios On Demand.
Welcome back to A Time for Change presented by Citi. I'm here with Rahul, Vohra, CEO of Superhuman, the email productivity app. And right before the break, we mentioned to stay through the commercial to talk about a new survey out today that Superhuman did to show what makes workers both productive and happy. And that happy part is something that for a long time, workers weren't supposed to be a big part of what we do throughout the workday, I feel like, in a lot of ways. So, Rahul, what were the key findings of this survey?
Well, the key takeaway, employers have to adjust what they do if they want to attract and retain talent. Our survey revealed two major trends, one on mental health and the other on flexibility. For mental health, more than half of knowledge workers said that mental health should be a responsibility shared with their employer, and that it can massively impact productivity. And for flexibility, 72% of knowledge workers said that a 4-day work week would make them twice as likely to stay with their company. And the kicker, nearly a third of them said that they would take a 20% pay cut if they would be allowed to work on their own schedule.
Right. A 4-day work week, I think, is welcome kind of information for a lot of people. People have been talking about that so much on Twitter and in private spaces. But I'm even for it, personally. But is that something that people can really believe in? Has this been done before? Is there any precedent that says a 4-day work week actually really works?
There have been some promising trials across the world. There was one recently in Iceland where it proved to have a positive impact on productivity and output. But it's something that we're continuing to watch very closely, and I can't wait for more data to be gathered.
Great. And we touched on Superhuman in that last segment about what exactly it does. Obviously, this email productivity app, and also I know you're able to take a lot of time for people searching in their inbox and really weed it out. Can you talk a little bit more about how the app actually takes so many emails and brings it virtually to zero?
Well, the difference is our focus on speed. And first is the speed of interaction. So for example, in Gmail, opening an email can take a second. Searching can take many seconds. In Superhuman, these things are instantaneous. And second is speed of workflow. In Superhuman, in one keystroke, you can move somebody to BCC, add another recipient, type out a nice reply, something that would normally take 5 minutes or more being reduced to just a few seconds. And together, these things save our users 3 hours every single week.
Right. And saving any amount of time these days is a welcome sign. You touched upon mental health, which obviously is such a big topic in today, and it's actually welcome in the workplace. And obviously in September, we saw a record number of job openings to the tune of 10.4 million across the U.S. So I'm curious, what in particular do companies need to acknowledge about mental health in order to retain and keep talent?
Well, if we go back to the survey, what we found is that knowledge workers who said that their employer provides substantial mental health resources were actually 65% more likely to rate their productivity as excellent compared to those who did not receive mental health resources. Now, that may be non-obvious for a while, so let's just let that sink in. Those folks who got a lot of mental health resources were significantly more likely to say that they were very highly productive. Now, in terms of what employers can actually do, there's a bunch of options. We can offer more PTO. We can offer fully paid medical or mental health leave. We can offer free counseling. We can offer support services. We could even create dedicated no contact hours for things like emails, Slack, and meetings so people can really enjoy a calm and a zen workday.
Also in the report, you talked about a seismic shift in what people value. Obviously, the shortened work week is there, obviously an emphasis on mental health, and also beyond the flexibility of remote work. I'm curious, what else does that look like? Are we really seeing the age of the way we see work just blowing up altogether?
We are. We're in a period of unprecedented change, of course, catalyzed by COVID. And everyone, employers and employees alike, are scrambling to figure out what this new world of work looks like. So we've talked about mental health support. We've talked about flexibility. Flexibility sort of splits up both in terms of new ways of working, like a 4-day work week, but also there's the remote and in-person discussion. But in addition, there's also clear communication norms. One consistent theme is that the thing that has the biggest impact on mental health is distraction from things like email and Slack messages and Microsoft Teams messages, and of course, meetings. So by choosing the right tools for these things, of course, by using things like Superhuman, I think we can actually make strides towards improving the mental health of all of our companies.
Yeah. And I'm also curious, after this survey, are there any particular changes to your own company in the way you all do business?
It's something that we're continuing to watch very closely, everything from flexible working hours through the 4-day work week to mental health support. But it's something where I think we're also quite ahead of the curve. There's a lot that we do already to support these initiatives. We offer a subscription to Calm, a meditation app. We have a partnership with a really great company called Human, where we offer one-to-one coaching. And we do actually provide access to mental health providers through our medical health benefits. So if there are leaders listening or watching who've been thinking about making these changes, I'd highly encourage it, because I can say for one that it's something that folks really do appreciate.
Absolutely. Rahul Vohra, CEO of Superhuman, thank you so much for sticking around for 2 segments. That's our show for today. On behalf of myself, Alexis Christoforous, Anjali Kimlani, thank you so much for watching today.